And welcome aboard, everyone. Steve Malzberg with you. And today, I'm going to get a unique perspective here on a very interesting comparison. We're joined right now by John Heubusch. John is the executive director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. He's also the author of a thriller. You've got to check this out, The Shroud Conspiracy. John, good to talk to you, sir.
Hey, great to be with you, Steve.
All right, let's talk about Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump. I've often maintained, because in the face of the calling always for who's going to be the next Reagan, we need another Reagan after the failed candidacies, especially of McCain and Romney, and who's going to be the next Reagan. I've always said there's never going to be another Reagan, and I don't think there ever will be. But let's talk about how you believe, because you're more of a student of Ronald Reagan than I, let's talk about how you believe the two compare. At 6 months into the presidency, compared to 8 years, it's not fair at this point. However, go.
Okay. You're right. I mean, we're just 6 months into the Trump presidency, but I can tell you, while the two men, in many, many ways, stylistically especially, are very different. I'd say from a vision perspective, what a lot of Reaganites are very happy to see is that President Trump almost on a daily basis takes one page or another from the Reagan playbook, as it relates to his vision for the country. And, that's everything from less taxes and less regulation and less spending and stronger defense and more freedom. So in that respect, I think their visions are quite similar.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They do share a lot in common, although Donald Trump, Republican, and of course Ronald Reagan originally was a Democrat. I do think that Donald Trump has a lot of Democrat in him, but certainly he's doing the right things when it comes to policy. He's doing the right things when it comes to the Supreme Court. So I couldn't care less about some of the things he did in giving money to Chuck Schumer as a businessman, as many people bring up. But let's talk here. You say that words matter. Now, there was no Twitter back then for Ronald Reagan. I've talked to Michael Reagan about this at length many times. What do you think about the Twitter, and what do you think about the words that Donald Trump sometimes does utter, either at the podium or through Twitter or in an interview, being that you believe so strongly, as do I, and as did Ronald Reagan, that words matter?
Yeah, well, words certainly do matter. What I'd say, Steve, is I've done a lot of interviews on this topic, and the one question that seems to come up more than any other is, would Reagan have tweeted, that great hypothetical? And, after thinking about it a long time, my answer is absolutely yes. Ronald Reagan was a master communicator, as everyone knows, and he took advantage of every medium possible to get his message across. And, if he had the ability with a few thumbs to reach 100 million people directly with no filter to get his vision across, he certainly would have done it. Would he have done it the way that President Trump has? I think not. I think that's where the similarity stops. President Reagan, knew the value of a communication strategy and, a very coordinated and disciplined approach to getting his message out. So what he wouldn't have done is allowed the tweets or that sort of thing to be in conflict with his message. And he had a very talented staff around him, and he understood how to, how to work the communications machine such that his tweets would have been in coordination or syncopation with the rest of the, the whole message machine. And I think that's where the difference lies.
You also talk about on policy how Reagan, tried to assure the concerns of both parties. Is that possible in this day and age? First of all, just the political landscape in and of itself. When you look at how, how divided they are and how vitriolic the Democrats are against Donald Trump, you have some who won't even meet with him when he asks them to meet with him. And then you have, of course, which is another topic, but it ties in, the media. and the media's response to Donald Trump, which is relentless, which is fake news in many respects. And I say fake news by omission because they'll tell you things and they don't put it in context that Obama did something similar, Clinton did something similar, FDR did something similar. They leave it out. They make it seem like this is the first time anything's ever like this has ever happened, with reference, for instance, when Trump talked about a judge in a negative way. He's not the only person who's done that. Obama lambasted the whole Supreme Court at the State of the Union. But that aside, so is it possible for him to emulate or walk in the footsteps of Reagan when it comes to addressing the needs of both parties when the other party is so vitriolic?
Yeah, impossible? No, I don't know that anything's impossible, but darn difficult, that's for sure. My sense is that the Trump administration, for better or worse, has made the decision that the media, the fourth estate, is a sworn enemy, and I actually think that they feel they can actually gain votes and win elections, just as this past election was won by having the press is truly in an enemy camp. And now what's kind of remarkable and almost unprecedented, seems to me, is that the media seems to be treating this White House and the presidency in like fashion, and so they've got we're literally at each other's throats, and I don't see that changing for a day in the Trump presidency. Now, with respect to the Democrat Party or certain Democrats in that party, I get the sense that President Trump, if need be, could be like President Reagan and has the ability to be pragmatic where necessary, if he feels that by working across the aisle, he can get something accomplished. And it may not seem like that today with people talking about treason and impeachment and things like this, but I do think in the future, whether it's with respect to tax reform or other such legislation, that I can imagine President Trump being able to work across the aisle if the Democrats feel it's in their own self-interest to do so. Very interesting. So as of yet, he doesn't believe that that's the case. Let me ask you one more. The speeches. You talk a lot about how Ronald Reagan used speeches and big events to kind of just, turn the focus. And certainly if he were involved in this kind of scandal, perhaps he could turn the focus, although, again, you're dealing with a different media, so I'll ask you that. I'll put that in the question, too. I don't know if it's as easy for Trump to do that, even with a brilliant speech. I thought he gave a brilliant speech at the G20. They criticized the heck out of it. So my question to you is, what could Trump do along the lines of Reagan when it comes to using speeches and events to, I don't know, to fight back against the press, change the narrative? Yeah, with today's technology and the explosion of social media and so many mediums and so many channels for people to get their news, I think President Trump, both benefits and suffers from that situation, unlike President Reagan. In President Reagan's case, 20, 30, 40 years ago, when there was a far more limited set of communications channels, 3 networks, a nascent cable station, and radio and TV and newspaper. It was within the grasp of the presidency to essentially orchestrate through events, through special appearances and press conferences, what they wanted the message to be. And the news cycle was such that, response times could be 24 hours as opposed to 24 seconds. And in that respect, I think President Reagan was able to control what he wanted his message to be. In President Trump's case, he's got this incredible advantage of being able to reach people instantly and without filter. And that's a real plus that President Reagan didn't necessarily have. But at the same time, that same, the state of play is such that with social media, the messages get so disparate, so played out across, a million different channels, and it's all, there's just so much noise in the system that it's hard to have a particular message penetrate through. And so, I think the environment and technology has changed so much so that the the two presidencies, had very different challenges on their hands.
Yeah, very, very interesting conversation. John Heubusch, Executive Director of the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute. I thank you so much. In the book, folks, The Shroud Conspiracy, there it is on your TV screen right in front of you. Thank you very much, John.
Absolutely. Great to see you, Steve.
You too. All right, folks, remember, always stay in touch. We are now on so many different platforms, DirecTV, on AT&T, and as well as, of course, Verizon Fios and Roku. There it is, DirecTV 349, AT&T Heubusch, channel 1220, Verizon Fios 615. Go to newsmaxtv.com and get all the information you need to watch us, and call your cable company if you don't see us on your cable network. Anyway, also, of course, the website is newsmax.com.